Wait, what? If you said that every time Trump says if, he's undermining the sanctity of our elections. He's once again threatening the peaceful transfer of power. Obama says it's not acceptable to sit out this election. He's a black man, so you better listen to him or else it's not acceptable.
Joe and Joe looked at each other and thought, you know, wouldn't it be a great legacy if Joe's the only guy ever to beat Trump? And I think the stuff he's done to undermine her in the last 10 days.
Democrats now saying they may not confirm a Trump victory. The plot continues. We know that everything they've been doing over the last 3.5 years, and if you want to go further than that, all the way back to 2015 when Trump first got into the fray here, they have been working to stop Trump at every turn, including Jamie Raskin. You remember him. He is the big anti-insurrectionist guy that is on the Democratic team, even though in 2016 after Trump won, he was objecting to Trump taking office. Now he is confirming the same. If Trump wins, they may not be too interested in confirming the outcome, which means they should probably be charged by felonies from Fani Willis, right? Now, House Democrats had previously railed against Speaker Johnson for hedging on whether that the GOP-controlled House would certify a Kamala Harris victory, right? Well, we'll see. They slammed Tom Cotton over this too, and everybody over it. Trump comes out. Well, we'll see. If it's free and fair, then yeah. But if the CIA rigs it again, like they did with their 51 letter, and then install Anthony Blinken as their Secretary of State after he colludes with Michael Morell to do that thing, we're not interested in being governed by a fake government that doesn't have the legitimacy of the people. But some of their senior members are playing a similar game now especially that Kamala is going into the gutter in the polls. Now, Democrats are trapped between their deep distrust of Trump and their vigorous denunciation of any election challenges in the year since January 6th. Even though the Democrats made many election challenges in the aftermath of Trump, there's videos of them for 20 minutes going on. Too much Democratic voices to listen to for 20 minutes, but it exists. Democratic leaders, however, seem fully prepared to certify a Trump victory. Yeah, right. We'll see. Now, what they're saying, Raskin, the House Oversight Committee ranking member and former J6 committee member who objected to Trump's electors in 2017, remember that? He told Axios in an interview, he says, well, if Trump won a free and fair and honest election, then we would obviously accept it. Wait, what? If you said that every time Trump says if, he's undermining the sanctity of our elections. He's once again threatening the peaceful transfer of power. If, right, that's what they say all the time. We're going to hear Jen Psaki melting down over this. However, Raskin said he definitely doesn't assume that Trump would use free, fair, and honest means to secure a victory, because it might be the Russians or maybe the CIA again. He says Trump is doing whatever he can to try to interfere with the process, whether we're talking about manipulating the Electoral College counts in Nebraska, which is actually changing the structure, which is all lawful, or manipulating the vote count in Georgia, or imposing other kinds of impediments, he says. Similarly, Rep. Jan Schakowsky, a chief deputy who voted to object to Bush's electors, said of Trump, I don't know what kind of shenanigans Trump is planning, saying, we would have to, in any election, make sure all the rules have been followed. Or what? Schakowsky's letter said in a statement that she was proud to join all my Democratic colleagues in certifying the 2020 election and look forward to doing the same in January 2025. Now, House Rules Committee ranking member Jim McGovern, who also objected to Trump in 2017, all of these guys now, said Democrats would certify a Trump victory. He says, well, you know, assuming everything goes the way we expect it to. What do you mean? We have to see how it all happens, says McGovern. All right, he needs to be charged with felonies too and indicted in multiple counties. My expectation is that we would. House Minority Leader Hakeem, who wields a huge influence over his members, says, well, there's little chance of an organized effort to decertify electors. Yeah, right. Which means there's a full plan. That means they have like 150 spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides. No, there's no plan at all. Yes, there is. How many people are working on it right now? Said Jeffries. House Administration Committee ranking member Joe Morell, Jeffries' top deputy on the election, has made similar statements. Now, zooming out, in 2005, Democrats objected to Bush, obviously. In 2017, half a dozen Democrats filed objections to 10 Trump elector slates, but no one from the Senate backed them. Now, in 2021, a majority of House Republicans voted to object to Biden's wins in Arizona and Pennsylvania, part of a sprawling effort. Raskin said Democrats don't engage in election fraud and election fabrication. Yes, you do. You're trying to change the rules in all of the states right now. We cover a lawsuit here basically every day lately. That's exactly what you're trying to do. You defrauded the country with your 51 laptop letter. Trump, and then you cooed booed Joe Biden out of there. Nobody's even voted for Kamala Harris. Election fabrication? This whole candidate is fake, Jamie. Trump and his loyalists are already laying the groundwork to deny Harris a victory, including filing over 100 lawsuits challenging procedures. Good. Democrats, for their part, may challenge a Trump win in court, but likely wouldn't take that fight all the way to Congress, said Benny Thompson, who was the chairman of the January 6th committee. Thompson argued that there are enough provisions in law so that losers who feel aggrieved in their loss can take it to court. Now, I expect we would do as we did in 16, says Dan Kildee, a member of Jeffrey's team, says, while disappointed with the outcome and despite a handful of outliers making a statement, nor now would we object to the result of a Democratic election. But what if Putin comes in again? What if Putin comes in and steals it again? What are they going to do? Not leave? Here was Raskin before saying, yeah, how about we just don't actually confirm this, using the 14th Amendment to keep Trump out.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody and civil war conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
So you see what the plan is: decertify, not certify, and then they'll keep Trump out. Then there'll be a lot of upset people about that. So then they'll just seize power, keep control indefinitely. They'll blame the Russians, they'll blame the Iranians, they'll blame something, and then they won't leave to save American democracy or something. Now, obviously, they're panicked because the numbers are not looking so good for them. Harry Enton over from CNN, he says, why are Democrats peeing their little pantalones? Well, the race is closer than it was 3 weeks ago. Way too close to call. And as we know, these polls are always low, right? Like they need to be up 5, 6, 7 points in these states because the sleeping Trump vote is always massive.
What is with all of this bedwetting among Democrats? Maybe it's an eternal problem, but let's take a look here.
It is.
These are, of course, the
Internal
Great Lake
problems
battleground states, the states we've been
Both.
focusing in on. If Kamala Harris wins these 3, she most likely gets to 270 electoral votes. Take a look 3 weeks ago. Harris was ahead by 2 in Pennsylvania, 2 in Wisconsin, 3 in Michigan. Look at where we are today. The race is even tighter than it was.
Let's
today.
go.
It's a 1-point advantage in Pennsylvania, 1 in Wisconsin, 1 in Michigan. Look, that's limited movement, but in a year in which this race has been so static, we're talking 1-point movement, 1-point movement, 2-point movements, and we see movements in all
trend
3.
for them.
This is the type of thing that, at least in the public polling, makes Democrats worried, and I think that the public polling in this case is reflected in some of that internal polling, some of that reporting that suggests that these Great Lake battleground states have certainly tightened a lot, where at this point they are way too close to call.
It is what you call a trend.
It is
when
a
you
trend.
see something like this over several states. When you compare this to 4 years ago, what does it look like?
Yeah, so let's take a look, and we're going to look at an average across these 3 states,
look at
right?
that.
Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. An average on October 11th. What do you see? Well, if you look 8 years ago, Hillary Clinton was way out in front in an average of these 3. She was up by 8. You go 4 years ago, Joe Biden was up by an average of 7 points across these 3 Great Lake battleground states. You come today, it's just a 1-point advantage for Kamala Harris across these 3 Great Lake battleground states. So Kamala Harris, at least in the polling, is doing considerably worse than Biden or Clinton. And of course, Clinton lost in all 3 of these states, and Joe Biden barely won in all 3 of these states.
Right.
So when you see Harris up by
barely
just
won.
a point across these 3, I think that this is really the type of thing that gets Democrats really to worry, John, because the simple fact is Kamala Harris is doing considerably worse than either Biden or Clinton was.
Yeah, at this number, what you start hoping for is somehow that the polls
Are actually right this time around?
are right this time
Yeah.
and doing a better job, and that's a little bit of a thin reed to base your hope on. There may be some other reasons in general why Democrats are more worried.
Yeah, so I think it just comes down to the fact that Democrats are more worried about a Donald Trump presidency than Trump supporters are about a Kamala Harris presidency. So angry if the opposing candidate wins. 52% of Harris voters say they'd be angry if Donald Trump won versus just 42% of Trump voters who say they'd be angry if Kamala Harris was. So I think this is more of a bigger, larger picture. It's not just that the polls are tightening. I think it's just that Democrats, John, are more worried in general about a Donald Trump presidency than the reverse in this particular situation.
Well, Democrats are hysterical people. They are upset upset about everything. Everything is an immediate emergency. Everybody has to stop and do whatever the government tells them to do. They're just panicky people. It's kind of in their DNA, I think. Now, here's another report from PO Strategies. It says one major reason party ID is now essentially tied is due to a fairly dramatic shift in partisan identification among Hispanic voters. 2 years ago, Democrats had a 23-point advantage with Hispanics on party ID. Now, that advantage has been cut in half and stands at just 12 points. And we talked about this morning on our Membos Only stream, how they just presume that everybody is going to be like them indefinitely. And we're asking ourselves, do the Latinos prefer to be called Latinxes? I don't think so. I don't really know. Maybe. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're not interested in universal 9-month abortions for everybody all the time, or having their kids' genitals removed, you know, stuff like that. So they treat people like trading cards and just presume that everybody is going to vote Democratic indefinitely, but their party has gone insane. So it's backfiring bigly. So what have they done to remedy some of these race relations? Well, Barack Obama's coming out. He's got a message for black men out there. So listen up, black men. Obama says it's not acceptable to sit out this election. He's a black man, so you better listen to him or else it's not acceptable. So I don't know what the repercussions are going to be, but Obama has spoken. So I guess that means something. Obama came out and on Thursday admonished black men who are hesitating to back Vice President Biden. Unbelievable. How could black men do such a thing? Telling them it's not acceptable to sit out this election and suggesting that they might be reluctant to vote for Harris because she's a woman. Wow. He's calling black men misogynists too. The striking comments by Obama made to a small group of voters in a surprise stop at a local. That's funny that CNN called it surprise striking. It is pretty striking, that's for sure. We're part of a more forceful campaign message. At a rally in the city later that evening, Obama issued some of the most searing public criticisms of Trump. He says, you're thinking about sitting out or supporting someone like Trump who has a history of denigrating you? When has Trump denigrated black men ever? Because you think it's a sign of strength? Because that's what being a man is? Putting women down? When has Trump done that? Obama said. Only Rosie O'Donnell, by the way, which is hilarious. That's not acceptable, says Obama. You hear him, black men out there? That problem, he suggested, was less complicated than some are making it out to be, and that it comes down to sexism too. You're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses, Obama told the black men. I've got a problem with that, Obama said, because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly to you, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president, and you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. And their polls must be brutal. As CNN reported, Harris has been focused on turning out black men even before she took over. I gotta tell you, man, if somebody came and talked to me like that and was like, listen, Rob, like, you're a white man and I'm disappointed in you, and it's unacceptable as a white man that you don't go vote for a woman because you're a white man, and what are you, some sort of a misogynist who can't support a strong woman? Like, the heck? Trying to get the enthusiasm there for President Joe Biden. He says the concern is that the couch is going to win. One person close to the Harris team told CNN, we need to make sure that black men, Hispanic men don't sit on the couch, which is racist. Are they calling them like lazy? Oh my gosh, I can't believe Kamala Harris's team is calling black men and Hispanic men lazy misogynists who just sit on the couch. I guess, I don't know what they're doing, because if they don't vote at all, then that's a vote for him. Now, Harris will travel to Detroit next week. Maybe she'll lecture black men too, for a Tuesday radio town hall hosted by nationally syndicated co-host Charlemagne the God. Oh, that's good. Maybe Charlemagne can talk about what his opinion is about Obama lecturing him, who announced the plan on Friday morning. He has millions of followers across digital platforms. During an hour-long conversation, they're going to talk about that. That's going to be good. It's going to be a disaster. I can't wait. As Harris's campaign works to recreate this, a multiracial Biden coalition, campaign operatives are offering similar directives out there, saying they're trying to work with private voters. Remember, you were raised by a strong black woman. A strong black woman took care of you, fed you, gave you an opportunity, said West to the NAACP audience. So they're saying Kamala's your mama? I think that's the argument. What? In a recording of the meeting obtained by CNN last month in Milwaukee, Harris's brother-in-law, called Anthony West, Harris's brother, quietly attended a local meeting of the NAACP, a technically nonpartisan group, yeah, technically, give me a break, whose members are filled with influential, mostly Democratic state activists and organizers. In a recording of the meeting, he made the case for Harris in strong terms. Remember, you were raised by a strong black woman. A strong black woman took care of you, fed you, gave you an opportunity in life. And Kamala is a strong black woman. Now, at the rally, Obama delivered his most personal, furious indictment yet of Trump, talking about changing diapers and stuff. It was pretty pathetic. He said, I'm not looking for applause now. They dragged Obama out. They must be hurting so badly. It's wild that they're actually lecturing everybody now. All right, here is Newt Gingrich and Mark Halperin talking about the state of the race. Let's listen to these two gray hairs with some election experience explain explain what's happening.
All right. I think that Kamala Harris has a number of big problems. One is that the two hurricanes, particularly the total disaster in North Carolina and the reality of war in the Middle East and the reality of war in Ukraine and the reality of 20 million illegal immigrants, including increasing attention to the people coming in, the organized criminals coming in from Venezuela. All of that, I think, puts her at a difficulty because while she might be an acceptable candidate in a period of peace and prosperity, if you need a strong commander-in-chief at a time that the country is in danger, I think that she fails on almost every grounds, including just body language. And she's not capable of communicating how, in a way that most people would think, oh yeah, I can see her in a real crisis doing something. I think second...
And let's just pause right there because I have a great clip to share on that point. This, I don't think, could be a better example of what Newt is talking about here. Kamala was in Arizona. I believe this is a clip from this. Newt mentioned her body language, and it is ridiculous. Here's an example.
As though it is a sign of weakness to have empathy. In the Senate, well, it was late into the night. You walk onto the Senate floor, and there are these big wooden ornate doors. And those ornate doors opened. And John McCain came out. He's going after me. And I'm going back after him. And that was it. And this is what the public saw. And then I step onto the floor of the well of the Senate later that day. We had votes. And I passed by John McCain. And he looks at me and he says, "Kid, come over here. You're going to make a great senator."
Okay, let's go back to Newt Gingrich. He's right. I don't know what she's thinking.
And she's really hurt by her record in ways that are weird. The fact that she has apparently not attended any of the hurricane briefings for 4 years, the fact that Governor DeSantis said that she never called during any of the hurricanes in the years she was vice president until now, that it's a campaign issue. All of that's just a reminder to people that in a lot of ways, she was not a serious person. She didn't do her job. She didn't do her homework. She didn't do the grinding daily things you have to do to be successful at the top. And then third, partly influenced by watching Saturday Night Live, which has the most brilliant rendition of her I've ever seen. But I'm also influenced by just watching her. I think, and I suspect you and I disagree a little bit about this. I think the dual disaster that she did badly on her own on 60 Minutes, and people were just tearing her apart the next day.
Yeah,
Hugh Hewitt in particular, just astonishing,
like this.
And how much he took apart that interview. But then the secondary story, which you and I agree that 60 Minutes has always had a tradition of editing cheerfully, which is why I refused to go on. I told him years ago, I said, I'll be glad to come on if it's unedited tape, but I will not come on if you're going to edit it.
Wild.
And they said, well, you're not coming on then. But given the mood of the country about the way the media has decayed, to have the totally incoherent version of her answering followed by the edited CBS version of her answering is just one more blow at two levels. One is it reminds everybody that the media who they dislike is totally for her.
Yep.
And two, it gives everybody a chance to see these two comparative explanations and is just a further reminder of how incoherent she's capable of being when she's on her own. So my guess is, again, as you know, I was wrong about the red wave in 2022. I'm cheerfully willing to accept that there are moments I've misunderstood this stuff. But my guess is that we're in the early stages of watching her collapse, and that given the objective, larger realities that surround her. One last comment, which I know you wrote me back about today. My hunch as a historian and occasional novelist is that sometime in the last 2 weeks, Joe and Jill looked at each other and thought, wouldn't it be a great legacy if Joe's the only guy ever to beat Trump? And I think the stuff he's done to undermine her in the last 10 days is pretty amazing, and I don't think it's an accident.
Yikes. All right, so great stuff. Newt is such an interesting, thoughtful, deep thinker. So we're happy that he's seeing it that way because I think he's right. I think Kamala is collapsing. I think that really she had a facade. It was like a bubble. You see it, in the stock markets or in the housing markets or in anything, crypto markets, right? It's a big bubble, but eventually the bubble works itself out. And the Democrats are starting to realize who their candidate ultimately is. They've got Kamala and Walz. Okay, here is Walz now. He is being interviewed by ABC, and apparently he's talking about misinformation in grocery stores or something.
And let's talk about the economy. That is the top issue for voters out there. 74% of voters said the past year they've had to cut back on groceries because of the rising costs, of course. And a lot of those voters, they're concerned they cast their vote for Kamala Harris, but she's responsible for that. So how do you reach those voters? What do you say to those voters who may blame her for the economy right now.
Yeah, folks in the middle. Well, we talked to them about what are the policies that are going to make a difference. And we see some of the data, but data doesn't impact people in their daily lives. Go into the grocery store and you see false information, whether it's bird flu impacting eggs. But the reality for most people is if those costs are up, they want to know what you're going to do about it. I think that's why she's focusing on making sure whether it's home ownership more affordable, tax cuts for the middle class, and let's just be candid about this price gouging piece of this.
Okay, so he was going to go into price gouging and go after the companies. Everybody's already universally condemned that idea. She's going to put price controls on, then we'll have shortages. We'll all be standing in bread lines, just like in communist countries, which Tim Walz is a giant fan of, apparently, brings a bunch of kids over there. Well, that's just one person who is in their party at the top of the ticket. They also have the Mr. First Gentleman, something that might be if Kamala wins, God forbid. And we have some interesting questions for him. Obviously, Doug Emhoff is this guy, and we read through some litigation from his prior law firm where apparently he hired a trophy secretary, somebody called Cat Y'all, and everybody wanted to get them a Cat Y'all, you know what I'm saying? And then apparently he hit some woman in Paris sometime when she was flirting with someone totally innocently. She's, hey, where's our car? Here's my ticket. Who are you talking to? It's ridiculous. Now there's other people confirming there's more to the story. And so Joe Scarborough on MSNBC sat Doug down and gave him a talking to.
You talk about the debate. Why do you think Donald Trump won't debate her again?
Well, you saw the first debate,
He already
didn't you?
debated twice.
Yeah, that's why. Got his ass kicked. And so he's afraid that that's going to happen again.
It was a rigged debate.
He's spreading this fog,
with
this
fake
fog
fact
of
checks
misinformation and disinformation and gaslighting, rather than face her again so we can
and he's
see the split screen.
He's spreading it about you, saying that tabloid stories about your personal life, saying it should be front and center. He's saying it about your wife.
What about it?
And making incredibly crude and lewd suggestions.
Like what?
About her past life.
Well,
I'm just curious. I know I seem like a very zen, mindful person.
No, you don't.
But I think I'd be pissed off.
No,
and I'm just wondering.
You seem like a psycho.
How do you all stay centered? How do you stay disciplined and not really go off and not really push back hard at these things?
We don't have time to be pissed off. We don't have time to focus on it. It's all a distraction. It's designed to try to get us off our game.
Does it get you off your game?
No. All we are doing, all we talk about is this election. We understand the stakes. We understand the responsibility.
What are
we
the
understand
stakes? What are the
stakes? Our very country, our future. What kind of future are we going to have? Who would you like picking the next 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices?
Well
the guy who picked the 3 who overturned Roe v. Wade and want to take away more and more freedom? Or do you want Kamala Harris picking the Supreme Court justices?
Yeah, big fan of Roe versus Wade, this guy, because he didn't want to have that baby with that nanny that he impregnated when he was married with his first wife.
Right. I mean, this is, she said it. It's not just the most important election of our lifetimes. It's the most important election of our nation's lifetime. So right now, you've seen us before, in the before times. A lot of happy couple talk. We love each other dearly. We love being around each other. We enjoy it. We have fun together. Right now, we're deferring that kind of happy couple time because everything we talk about right now is what else can we be doing to win this election?
You're talking about the
Where else can we go? How can we make sure that we are getting the word out? And that's it, because like I said, the stakes are too high. So all that other stuff you're talking about bounces off. It's just a distraction. We're not going to let it distract us.
So I guess backhanding women and running an abusive law firm and having a history of misogyny, having a bunch of people speak out about your abuse is all a distraction. And I would call it a distraction too if I were an abusive woman beater like Doug. Fortunately, I'm not. And I'm happy about that. But Doug has some questions that he should be answering, and Joe Scarborough didn't ask them. So his history, his past will be ignored and swept under the rug, but we'll be here to continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing, my friends, wherever it is you're watching this. I appreciate you being here.